All right, get ready to dive deep because today it's all about the world of machine learning. We've got this stack of articles from some pretty sharp tech minds and the future of AI. It's looking bright. But like any powerful tool, there are some serious pitfalls to watch out for. You know how they say it's going to be a multi-billion-dollar industry? Well, it's also a multi-billion-dollar headache if you don't know what you're doing.
What's interesting is we often get so caught up in what AI can do, but understanding where it can go wrong is just as valuable, especially for someone like you listening who wants to get past the hype and get right to the core challenges.
Exactly. We're going to unpack some of those unexpected roadblocks that can trip up even the most seasoned experts. And honestly, some of these are pretty mind-boggling. Let's start with something that sounds straight out of a science fiction movie. AI hallucinations.
Camden Sweda from New Relic, a data platform specialist, says most of the ML engineers he knows have actually encountered this.
Wait, hold on. AI hallucinations. Is that like when my spam filter suddenly starts recommending me those Nigerian prince scams?
Not quite, but it's definitely in the realm of bizarre. Imagine you got a system that's built to summarize medical research. It's working great, pulling key points from verified studies. But then it starts throwing in facts about alien DNA and miracle cures that have zero basis in reality. That's an AI hallucination when the system just generates outputs that are completely detached from the data it was trained on.
So it's making stuff up. But why would a system designed to be logical and data-driven suddenly start spinning these tall tales?
That's a fascinating question.
Mm.
It seems that when we put so much emphasis on content generation, and we don't focus enough on grounding the AI in verified sources, we run into trouble. It's like asking a student to write a report without giving them any books or articles. They're bound to start making stuff up.
Okay, so how do we stop our AI from going rogue and writing a fictional medical textbook?
One promising approach is called R retrieval augmented generation. Instead of letting the AI just go off on its own, we give it specific verified sources to pull from. Like, say you're building a legal chatbot with RARG. You wouldn't just let it riff on legal concepts, you'd actually connect it to a database of actual legal statutes, so its advice is grounded in real-world law.
That makes a lot of sense. Give the AI the tools to be accurate, not just creative. Now, moving on. Another challenge we see cropping up is bias in these systems. I find this one tricky because we think of algorithms as being objective, but somehow bias still sneaks in.
Sheldon Arora, the CEO of Staff DNA, a company that uses AI in healthcare recruitment, says it all comes down to the data we use to train these models. If the data reflects existing biases in the real world, let's say, historical underrepresentation of certain groups and professions, the AI will simply learn and perpetuate those biases.
So it's not that the AI is intentionally being prejudiced, it's that it's learning from biased data.
Exactly. And that means we can't just throw data at an algorithm and hope for the best. We need to be proactive about addressing bias. For example, there are tools that can analyze your data for imbalances, highlighting areas where you might need to collect more diverse data. You can also build feedback loops where users can flag potentially biased outputs, allowing you to refine the model over time.
Sounds like constant vigilance is key here. We can't just set these models loose and assume they'll be fair and impartial.
Exactly. And speaking of vigilance, let's move on to the legal and ethical implications of AI, which are getting more and more complex.
Yeah, this isn't just about glitches and bugs anymore. We're talking about real-world consequences that can be pretty serious.
Absolutely. Imagine a financial AI that's been trained on data that unintentionally favors certain demographics when approving loans, or a hiring algorithm that systematically overlooks qualified candidates from specific backgrounds. These are situations where AI can perpetuate and even amplify existing inequalities, and that's a major concern.
It's like those science fiction stories where the robots take over, but in this case, the robots are making biased decisions that impact people's lives.
And the legal side of things is still catching up. For example, the EU's GDPR has strict regulations about using personal data for AI. If you're building an AI system that processes personal data, you need to be aware of these regulations or risk some pretty hefty fines.
So it's not just about building a cool AI system, it's about understanding the legal and ethical ramifications.
Right, and it's about being proactive.
Yeah.
For example, you might need to build in mechanisms so individuals can contest AI-based decisions that affect them, or implement transparency measures that make it clear how the AI makes decisions.
This is definitely a lot to think about. It seems like that whole move fast and break things mentality that worked in the early days of tech just doesn't fly when you're dealing with AI that can have such a profound impact on people's lives.
I agree. And speaking of things that can break, let's talk about the importance of data quality in machine learning. You know that saying, garbage in, garbage out. Well, it applies tenfold to AI.
Oh, I can totally see that. It's like trying to bake a cake with rotty eggs and moldy flour. No matter how good your recipe is, it's going to be a disaster.
Gartner, a leading research firm, says a surprising number of companies are actually struggling with data reliability. And this is a major roadblock to adopting AI. They're collecting data, but it's either inaccurate, incomplete, or just plain irrelevant for the task at hand.
So it's not just about having tons of data, it's about having the right data.
Exactly. Marin Christianobidiou, the CEO of online games, is a great example. He was talking about how irrelevant content recommendations often point to biased or incomplete data. Imagine you're an online retailer using AI to recommend products to customers. If your data is skewed towards a certain demographic, your recommendations might totally miss the mark for other customer segments.
It's like those times when a streaming service thinks you're obsessed with reality TV just because you watched one episode with a friend. And suddenly you're drowning in recommendations for shows you have zero interest in.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that leads to frustrated customers and lost sales.
So what can companies do to make sure they're not feeding their AI systems a diet of digital junk food?
First, they need to assess the quality of their data.
Mm-hmm.
Are there gaps, inconsistencies? Are there biases lurking within the data? Once they understand the state of their data, they can start to implement strategies for cleaning it up, enriching it, and making sure it's fit for purpose.
That makes sense. You wouldn't build a house on a foundation of sand, and you wouldn't build an AI system on a foundation of bad data.
Exactly. Now, even if you have perfect high-quality data, your machine learning models themselves can still go off the rails. We're talking about the tricky issues of overfitting and underfitting.
You know, I always struggle to understand those concepts. Can you break those down for me and for our listeners who might be in the same boat?
Okay, think of it this way. Imagine you're teaching someone to identify different types of birds. If you only show them robins, they might get good at recognizing robins, but they won't have a clue what a sparrow or a blue jay looks like. That's overfitting the model, becomes so focused on the training data that it can't generalize to new examples.
So it's like someone who memorizes a textbook but can't actually apply the knowledge to real-world problems.
Exactly.
Yeah.
On the flip side, underfitting is like showing them just one blurry picture of a bird and expecting them to identify any bird they see. They just don't have enough information to make accurate distinctions.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. So how do we find that sweet spot where our AI models are neither too specialized nor too general?
Elvis Sun, a software engineer at Google and the founder of PressPulse, offers some great insights here.
Yeah.
He talks about using techniques like cross-validation, where you test your model on data it hasn't seen before to make sure it can generalize beyond the training set. And there's regularization, which helps prevent the model from becoming too complex and overly focused on the training data.
So it's like adding those guardrails to keep the model on track, not too narrow, not too broad, but just right.
Precisely. But let's get real. Can you imagine what would happen if you had an overfitted model in something like healthcare? Let's say there's an AI system for diagnosing skin cancer from images. If it's overfitted to a specific data set of images, it might miss crucial variations in skin tones or lesion appearances, leading to misdiagnoses.
That's a chilling thought. It really highlights how important it is to get these models right, especially when people's health is on the line.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, imagine you've built this amazing AI model, but it's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole because you have to deal with outdated technology, those legacy systems that every organization seems to have.
Legacy systems. They're like that old computer in the basement that still runs Windows 95. You should get rid of it, but it's still there.
Damian Filiatros, the CEO of Scalable Path, a software staffing agency, really hits the nail on the head. He warns that these legacy systems can be a major roadblock for machine learning projects. They're often incompatible with modern AI tools, creating integration headaches and hindering efficiency.
So it's like trying to run the latest video game on that old Windows 95 computer. The hardware just can't keep up. Can you give us a real-world example of this clash between old and new tech?
Sure. Let's say you're a manufacturer who's invested in a sophisticated predictive maintenance system that uses AI to anticipate equipment failures. But your factory floor is still running on legacy systems that were installed decades ago. The AI might be flagging potential problems, but if that data can't be seamlessly integrated with the legacy systems that actually control the equipment, those insights are useless.
That sounds incredibly frustrating. You have this powerful tool, but it's basically handcuffed by outdated technology.
Exactly. And it highlights the need for strategic planning when it comes to integrating AI into existing systems. Companies need to assess their current infrastructure, identify potential roadblocks, and develop a clear roadmap for bridging the gap between old and new technologies.
Sounds like a lot of companies might need to do some serious tech spring cleaning before they can fully embrace AI. Now, here's another challenge that can trip up AI projects scaling up. What happens when a model that works perfectly fine on a small scale suddenly has to deal with a ton of data? It's like that tiny little car trying to merge onto a highway during rush hour.
Sheldon Aurora, who we mentioned earlier, brings up this crucial point. He stresses that as data volumes grow, you need to have scalable cloud computing resources to handle the computational load. Think of it as upgrading to a much bigger engine to power your AI.
So it's not just about the AI's intelligence, it's also about its processing power.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's where those distributed computing frameworks come in. They allow you to break down massive data sets and process them in parallel, like a bunch of supercomputers working together to solve a complex problem.
It's like having a team of chefs instead of just one, all working together to prepare a feast. But what are the consequences if you don't address these performance and scalability issues? Does the system just freeze up?
In some cases, yes. Imagine an e-commerce platform using AI for real-time product recommendations. During a huge sale, the volume of data can skyrocket. If the system isn't built to handle that surge, it might slow to a crawl, which frustrates customers and can cost the company a lot of money. In worst-case scenarios, the system could even crash entirely.
That's a scary thought. It seems like performance and scalability are essential ingredients for success in the world of AI.
Absolutely. Now, let's dive into an aspect of AI that often sparks debate and even a bit of fear: the black box dilemma.
Ah, the black box. It's like that mysterious locked room in a detective novel. Something's happening inside, but you can't quite figure out what it is.
That's a great analogy. In a lot of AI systems, even the experts who built them can't fully explain how the AI reaches its conclusions. It processes data, runs its algorithms, and spits out an answer, but the exact reasoning behind that answer is a mystery.
So it's like having a chess player who makes incredible moves but can't explain their strategy.
Exactly. And this lack of transparency can be a big obstacle to building trust, especially in areas like healthcare or finance, where people need to understand the reasons behind decisions that impact their lives.
Damian Filiatros brings up this concern too. He points out that when people don't understand how a system works, they're less likely to trust it, especially when those systems are making decisions about their health, their finances, or their livelihoods.
That's a valid point, and it underscores the need for what we call explainable AI, which is a growing field of research that focuses on creating models that can provide insights into their decision-making processes. Imagine you're a doctor using an AI-powered diagnostic tool. Wouldn't you feel more confident if the system could explain how it came up with its diagnosis, what factors it considered, and how certain it was?
Absolutely. It's like having a second opinion from a colleague, but one that can process vast amounts of medical data in an instant. But doesn't that level of transparency require a trade-off? I mean, don't some of the most powerful AI models rely on incredibly complex algorithms that are inherently difficult to explain?
You're right, it's a balancing act. The more complex the model, the harder it can be to make it transparent. But that doesn't mean we should give up on explainability. It just means we need to keep pushing the boundaries of research, finding ways to make those complex models more understandable without sacrificing their power.
So it's not an either thing. It's about finding that sweet spot where AI can be both insightful and interpretable.
Exactly. Now, let's talk about the importance of domain expertise in AI projects. It's not enough to just have brilliant data scientists and engineers. You need people who understand the specific field you're applying AI to.
It's like having a team of expert chefs, but have never actually run a restaurant. They might know how to cook amazing food, but they might not understand the complexities of managing a kitchen, serving customers, and running a successful business.
I love that analogy. Elvis' son highlights this point perfectly. He says that machine learning isn't just about abstract algorithms, it's about solving real-world problems. And those problems often come with a whole lot of baggage: industry-specific jargon, complex regulations, and unique data structures.
So it's like trying to build a house without understanding the laws of physics or the properties of different building materials.
Precisely. And that's why it's so important to have close collaboration between AI experts and specialists in that domain. You need those tech people who speak the language of algorithms, but you also need people who can bridge the gap between the digital world and the realities of specific industries.
I'm thinking about this in healthcare, an area I'm really interested in. You could have the most advanced AI system for diagnosing diseases, but if the developers don't understand the complexities of patient care, the ethical considerations, and all the regulations in healthcare, that AI probably won't be successful.
Absolutely. And that brings us to our final challenge for this part of our deep dive, the talent crunch. The demand for AI expertise is going through the roof, but the supply of qualified professionals is struggling to keep up.
It's like trying to put on a Broadway show with only half the cast and crew. You might have a brilliant script and a talented director, but without enough actors, singers, dancers, stagehands, and technicians, you're not going to have a successful production.
Peter Krinsky from Gartner paints a vivid picture of this issue. He says that the growing gap between technical and non-technical stakeholders is a major challenge. You have all these brilliant AI experts who speak code, but they often struggle to communicate effectively with business leaders who don't have that technical background.
So it's like having a bunch of brilliant musicians who can't play together because they're all speaking different musical languages.
Exactly. And this communication breakdown can lead to misunderstandings, missed opportunities, and ultimately failed projects. Companies need to invest in bridging this communication gap, maybe through training programs that teach technical skills to non-technical employees, or by creating new roles like AI translators who can help these different groups communicate.
Sounds like we're entering a new era where collaboration and communication are just as important as technical skills in the world of AI. And that's a great place to wrap up part 1 of our deep dive.
Indeed. We've covered a lot of ground, but we've only just started exploring the challenges and opportunities that AI presents.
Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll delve even deeper into the fascinating and sometimes frustrating world of machine learning. Welcome back, deep divers. We're picking up right where we left off, exploring the tricky side of machine learning, those unexpected twists and turns that can make even the smartest AI trip up.
And we're moving beyond just those technical glitches, delving into those moments where AI runs into those messy realities of human behavior and expectations.
You know, in part 1, we talked about those AI hallucinations where the system just goes off script and starts generating stuff that has nothing to do with reality.
Yeah.
But there's another side to that that's just as strange, this issue of unpredictable outputs.
Okay, imagine this. You've trained a financial model to predict stock prices. Based on historical data, market trends, all those variables that Wall Street loves. It's been working perfectly, making these accurate predictions, helping investors make smart decisions. But then, one day, it just goes haywire. It predicts this massive surge in the price of a company that's practically bankrupt.
Wait, what? That's like the AI version of betting on a horse that already fell at the starting gate.
Exactly. And this unpredictable behavior, it's not a bug or anything. It comes from the very nature of machine learning. These models are constantly learning and evolving, which is great when it means better accuracy and insights, but it also means their behavior can be hard to predict, especially when they get new data or when the market suddenly changes.
So it's like those self-driving cars, the early ones, that could navigate a route but would freak out if a squirrel ran across the road.
Precisely. They hadn't learned to deal with those random real-world situations. And that highlights something important. We can't assume our AI will always behave the way we expect. We need to really test them, not just in controlled environments, but in those chaotic real-world situations too.
It's like those crash tests they do with cars. We need to make sure our AI can handle those figurative fender benders without going off course.
Exactly. And even with the best testing, we have to accept that something unexpected could still happen. That's the nature of any complex system, right?
Okay, so we need to build in safeguards, backup plans for when AI throws us a curveball. But how do we do that without, crushing that very innovation that makes AI so powerful?
Well, that's where human oversight comes in. We can't just set AI free and hope for the best.
Right.
We need human experts involved, those professionals who can step in when things go sideways and provide that judgment, that intuition, that experience.
So it's not about replacing human expertise. It's more like augmenting it with AI. It's like having a really smart co-pilot who can handle all the calculations and data stuff, freeing up the human pilot to focus on the decisions that need, intuition and strategy.
That's a great analogy. It's about finding that sweet spot where human intelligence and artificial intelligence work together.
Okay, let's switch gears for a bit and talk about something that often gets overlooked but can be a real showstopper for AI projects, the lack of clear business goals.
It's like going on a road trip with no destination. You might enjoy the ride, but you won't end up where you need to be.
I've seen this happen. Companies get all excited about AI, they invest in the latest and greatest tools, but they never actually stop to figure out what they want to do with it.
It happens all the time. They're attracted to the technology, but they haven't really thought through the real-world applications. They need to ask, What problem are we trying to solve here? How is AI going to help us reach our business goals? What does success actually look like?
So it's not enough to just say, we want AI. You need to have that vision, that plan that connects the tech to real business outcomes.
Precisely. And that takes collaboration between the tech teams and the business side.
Yeah.
They need to be on the same page, working together to define those goals, figure out how to measure success, and have that shared understanding of what they're trying to achieve.
It's like a basketball team where the coach and the players have different ideas about how to win the game. They might have individual talent, but without that shared strategy and an understanding of each player's role, they won't be successful.
Love that analogy. It really highlights the importance of teamwork in AI projects. And it leads to another important point. You need a clear plan for implementation. It's not enough to have an idea. You have to break it down into steps, set realistic timelines, define roles, and track milestones.
So it's like planning that road trip we were talking about earlier. You need to map the route, find places to stop, make sure you have enough gas, and think about detours.
Exactly. And you need the right vehicle for the journey, the right infrastructure and processes to support your AI. You need to make sure the AI works with how you're already doing things without disrupting everything or creating new bottlenecks.
It's like making sure your fancy new AI engine fits under the hood of your existing car and that all the parts work together. Now, let's talk about something that's been in the news a lot, data security and privacy. In a world where data is gold, we need to be really careful about protecting it, especially when we're talking about AI that can handle mountains of sensitive information.
Absolutely. We're trusting these systems with everything. Our medical records, our finances, and the potential for someone to misuse that. It's huge. We need to be thinking about security from the start, building those strong safeguards into the foundation of our AI systems.
Like building a fortress to protect the crown, Jules, those piles of data that are so valuable to businesses and so tempting to hackers. But it's not just about keeping the bad guys out, right?
Right. We also need to make sure our AI is secure itself, resilient to attacks. Because if a hacker gets into an AI system, they can change the outputs, mess with the data, and cause a lot of chaos.
Imagine a hacker getting control of a self-driving car or a medical system. It could be disastrous. So we have to think about security from both sides, protecting the data and protecting the AI itself.
Exactly. It's a complex challenge, and it requires a multi-layered approach to security, incorporating everything from encryption and access controls to strong cybersecurity measures that can spot and stop intruders.
And it's not just about the technology itself. It's about creating a culture of security in organizations. You need to train employees to recognize threats, follow best practices, and report anything suspicious.
Absolutely. Security is everyone's responsibility. Now, let's switch gears again and talk about something that's often talked about but rarely solved: the ethical side of AI development. It's one thing to build smart and efficient AI, but it's another thing to build AI that aligns with our values and doesn't, make existing biases worse or create new problems.
Yeah. It's like those sci-fi stories where technology gets ahead of our ability to understand what it all means. We have to make sure we're not creating AI that's more trouble than it's worth.
Exactly. And that means a change in thinking from just the technical side to a bigger picture approach that considers how this tech impacts society. We need to be asking the tough questions. How will this affect people's lives? What are the unintended consequences? What safeguards do we need to prevent harm?
So it's not just about the code, it's about the conversation, right? It's about getting everyone involved, ethicists, social scientists, policymakers, community leaders, to make sure AI is developed responsibly.
Exactly. It's a conversation everyone needs to be having, from CEOs to students, because the future of AI isn't just a tech issue, it's a societal one.
Okay, here's a challenge that's often underestimated. You have to keep learning and adapting in AI. It's a field that's always changing, with new discoveries and new challenges popping up all the time.
It's like being a doctor. But medicine keeps changing rapidly. You can't just rely on what you learned in med school. You have to stay updated on research, learn new tech, and be constantly adapting to give the best care to your patients.
And in AI, that means keeping up with the new algorithms, techniques, and tools that are constantly being developed. It also means being aware of the ethical considerations and those societal impacts we talked about.
Exactly. It's about creating a culture of constant learning in organizations, encouraging teams to experiment, take risks, and have that mindset of always growing, which is important in any field, but especially in a field like AI.
One of the big worries about AI is that it'll replace human jobs and create tons of unemployment. What are your thoughts on that?
It's a valid concern. But, throughout history, new technology has always disrupted the workforce. The printing press, cars, computers. They all led to job losses in some areas, but they also created new opportunities, new industries, new types of jobs.
So it's not necessarily about humans versus machines. It's about them working together, each doing what they do best.
Absolutely. The key is to focus on those uniquely human skills. Creativity, critical thinking, problem solving, empathy, communication, and finding ways to use AI to make those skills even better.
Now, let's talk about a challenge that can be a real pain for people trying to use AI solutions: the lack of standardized best practices. It's like trying to build a house with no blueprint. Everyone's doing their own thing, and the results can be all over the place.
It's a real problem, and it can lead to confusion, inefficiency, and even safety issues. Think about the early days of the internet, when there were no rules for web design or cybersecurity. It was a bit of a wild west, with websites that were hard to use and easy to hack.
So we need those industry standards, those guidelines, those best practices that create a framework for developing and using AI safely and responsibly.
Exactly. And that's where organizations like the Partnership on AI and the IE Global Initiative on Ethics of Autonomous and Intelligent Systems come in. They're bringing together experts from all over to create ethical frameworks and guidelines that will shape AI's future.
It's like having building codes that make sure buildings are safe and sound, but for our digital world.
That's a great way to put it. Now, let's talk about a challenge that can be a sticking point for people trying to get support for AI projects: the difficulty of measuring their return on investment. It's one thing to invest in AI, but it's another thing to prove it's actually worth it.
It's like launching a new product, but not tracking sales or customer feedback. You might feel good about it, but without those numbers, it's hard to justify the investment.
Exactly. That's why you need to define clear metrics for success right from the start and keep track of those metrics throughout the project. It's not just about how well the AI works technically, it's about showing how that translates into real business value. Better efficiency, lower costs, happier customers, whatever's important for your organization.
So it's not just about building AI that works, it's about building AI that gets results and proves its worth.
Exactly. And that brings us to another challenge that can be both exciting and frustrating: the hype cycle.
Ugh, the hype cycle. It's that roller coaster of big expectations followed by the inevitable disappointment that comes with every new technology.
And AI is no different. We're constantly hearing about its amazing potential, and it's easy to get caught up in the excitement. But AI isn't magic. It's powerful, but it's not a solution for everything.
So we need to be realistic about what AI can and can't do. We need to balance the hype with some healthy skepticism and a focus on practical uses. We need to be clear about AI's limitations, know that it's not a miracle cure, and focus on those problems it can actually solve.
Exactly. And that means communicating well. We need to explain AI better to everyone, make those complex algorithms less mysterious, and address those fears and misunderstandings people have about the technology.
It's about making AI approachable, understandable, and less scary. It's about having a conversation that involves everyone, not just the tech experts.
Absolutely. Now, let's go back to something we touched on before: the lack of interpretability in some AI models. It's that black box issue, where a system might be getting great results, but we don't really know how it's doing it. And that can make it hard to trust or use it, especially in areas like healthcare or finance, where people need to understand how decisions are being made.
It's like a chef who makes an amazing dish but won't tell you the recipe. You might love the food, but you're left wondering how they did it. And without knowing the ingredients or the method, you can't make it yourself.
That's a perfect analogy. It shows why we need explainable AI, which is a growing area of research focused on making models that can give us insights into how they make decisions. Like, imagine you're a loan officer using AI to decide who gets a loan. If the system just says yes or no without any explanation, you have no way to understand the decision or explain it to the applicant.
But if the system can show you the factors it considered, how important each factor was, and the logic behind its decision, then you understand how it works and can use that information to improve things.
Exactly. And it helps you build trust with the applicants, because they're not just being judged by a mysterious system. They can see the reasoning, and if they don't like the outcome, they might be able to do something to change it.
It's about transparency and accountability, which are so important for building trust in any system, but especially AI systems that can make big decisions.
Absolutely. Now, let's talk about a challenge that's really important. In a world where things are constantly changing, we need AI that can adapt. The world is dynamic, and AI needs to keep up.
It's like teaching a dog to fetch your slippers, but then you move to a new house. The dog needs to adapt to the new place, figure out the layout, and still find your slippers.
Exactly. In the world of AI, those changes can be all sorts of things, new data patterns, changes in the market, different customer preferences, or even unexpected events like a pandemic or a natural disaster.
So we need AI that can learn from new experiences, adjust its models, and keep performing well even when things change. It's like having a GPS that can reroute you when there's a road closure or traffic.
Precisely. And that brings us to the importance of feedback. We need to constantly monitor how our AI is doing, collect data on how it's being used, and use that info to improve the models. It's not a one-time thing. It's a continuous cycle of learning and getting better.
Like a personal trainer who keeps changing your workout based on your progress, goals, and feedback.
That's a great way to put it. It shows that AI and human users need to be constantly interacting, where feedback from the real world makes the AI smarter and more effective.
Now let's talk about a challenge that's often about human psychology, the resistance to change that can happen when AI comes into a workplace.
Think about those fields where experience, intuition, and human judgment have always been central: healthcare, law, finance. It's natural for people in these fields to be wary of AI, especially when it challenges what they've always done.
It's like asking a craftsman who's been building furniture by hand for years to suddenly use machines. They're proud of their work, connected to the traditional way, and afraid their skills will become useless.
Absolutely. It's not just about the tech. It's about how that tech affects people. It's about addressing those fears, understanding those concerns, and showing that AI can actually help human experts, not replace them.
So it's not about forcing AI on people, it's about getting them on board. It's about showing that AI can be a partner, not a threat.
Exactly. It's about finding the right balance between encouraging new ideas and respecting tradition, between embracing AI and recognizing the value of human experience and judgment.
And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into this amazing world of machine learning.
We've been through a lot, haven't we? From those crazy AI hallucinations to the ethical stuff that comes with building intelligent systems.
We talked about how important data quality is, the need for clear business goals, the never-ending challenge of security and privacy, and all those human factors that can make or break an AI project.
But before we wrap up, there's one thing we have to talk about: explaining the value of machine learning to the people who control the budget.
You know the ones I mean. The decision makers, the investors, the people who decide if a project gets the green light.
It's like having a game-changing product but not knowing how to market it. You could have the most innovative AI ever, but if you can't explain why it's great and convince people of its value, it's going to be a hard sell.
So it's not enough to just build a brilliant AI system.
Right.
You have to tell a story that makes sense to those who can actually make it happen.
Exactly. And it's not about hype or making promises you can't keep. It's about showing them, with data, how AI can benefit them.
Things like increased efficiency, lower costs, better decisions, better customer experiences. That's what gets those decision makers interested.
We need to speak their language, using metrics and real-world examples to prove that return on investment.
It's like translating all this complex algorithms and technical stuff into something anyone can understand.
We need to connect the dots between the technical side and the impact on their bottom line.
But it's not all about the numbers, is it?
No, not at all. It's also about appealing to their hopes and dreams, their desire to solve problems, make things better, and create a better future.
We need to show them what AI can do, paint a picture of a world where AI helps us move forward, not hold us back.
It's about inspiring them to embrace this new technology and invest in its potential.
But inspiration alone isn't enough. We also need to build trust and be transparent.
We need to be upfront about what AI can't do and acknowledge that it's not a magic solution for every single problem.
We need to be honest about the challenges, the risks, the ethical concerns.
And we have to make it clear that we're committed to developing AI that reflects our values.
So it's not about overselling AI, it's about being real transparent and accountable.
It's about understanding each other and sharing responsibility.
And that takes constant communication and working together.
We need to keep those decision makers in the loop throughout the whole AI journey, keeping them updated, addressing their concerns, showing them we're all in this together.
It's not a one-time pitch, it's an ongoing conversation.
It's about building relationships, earning trust, working together to shape the future of AI in a way that benefits everyone.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the fascinating world of machine learning.
We've explored a lot, haven't we? The challenges, the amazing possibilities, and how important the human element is in all of this.
If there's one thing to remember from all of this, it's that machine learning isn't just about algorithms and data, it's about people.
It's about those brilliant minds who are pushing the limits of what's possible, those leaders who are shaping its future, and all those people whose lives are being changed by it.
As we move forward into this new world, it's so important that we do it with excitement, but also caution and a sense of responsibility for the power we're unleashing.
So, to everyone listening, as you think about the future of AI, we'll leave you with this. What will your role be in shaping this powerful technology?
Will you be a creator, an innovator, a voice of reason, a collaborator? The decisions we make today will determine the world we live in tomorrow.
So let's choose wisely and work together to build a future where AI helps humanity, not the other way around.
Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey into machine learning. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking those tough questions, and keep learning.